I've just finished 5 years of med school and I've been obsessed with asking the question of how can we make learning more effective? How can we get more done in less time? How can we learn long term and make it enjoyable? And I've combined some of my best strategies in this video here, which I'm hoping will be able to take your study game to the next level. Because whatever you're doing in life, whether it's university, work, or just a hobby, everyone would take a greater rate of learning, a easier ability to memorize things. And here's some of the strategies how. So I'll formulate this video in a address to a series of complaints. So when it says I can't find time to study, yes, that might be what you're feeling, but it also, for the person who has lots of time to study, this is how you'll get more done with that time. So number one, scheduling. This is a person-specific approach. I think if you're someone who procrastinates lots, block out specific times on your calendar. And I like to do 60 to 90-minute sessions. I personally, first thing in the morning is when my sweet zone is, and I'll just work. I won't look at the time. I'll just work for as long as I take, and then until I get a little bit tired, then I'll have a rest. But I know it's roughly in that 60 to 90-minute zone. I think using a repeated time of day for any important activity is good. So, for example, like you wake up every day, that doesn't get disturbed. So, the first thing you do in the morning, that can be a routine. You brush your teeth, at consistent times. So, if I had the goal of doing 10 push-ups a day, I might do it, after I brush my teeth every single day. Whereas the issue with some other things, like saying, I'll go to the gym, after dinner, is like, let's say you're out for dinner and then you can't. That's not something that you don't have dinner at home every day. And so it's important, like if you can find some sort of cue that you do every day and then back that up with a study routine, that'll make it a lot easier to find repetitive times to study. You can set a timer. I think that actually minimizes me going on to other sites like Instagram or checking messages. If I just say, all right, 60 minutes, I'm only working here. Some people will put their device on airplane mode, eliminate all the distractions, any reason that can make you stop. If you don't like your chair, if it's bothering you, then just get a new chair or move desks, fix the height of the desk. Anything that distracts you in that 60 minutes can be addressed. But the idea is you set a timer, say for 60 minutes, and all you do is work. Once the timer is off, then you can, message people and check everywhere else. Then in terms of breaks, it's important to take breaks and take breaks early before you really get like, fatigued and tired. Take the break early. So the idea is to keep ourselves at that point of useful efficiency for as long as possible. So if we start the day at 100%, what we don't want to do is really trickle down to 50%, have a bit of a break, and then and work a bit more, and then have a bit of a break, and then you might have, a longer break here. But it's all like the actual time you spend in this top zone is quite small. Rather, it's better to do a little bit of work, have a break, a little bit of work, have a break, a little bit of work, and then maybe you have a bigger break here. And this is similar to what's described in the Pomodoro approach. Essentially, it's a series of short, maybe 30-minute sessions with 5-minute breaks. And after three of those, you take a 30-minute break. For someone who's interested in this idea, it's worthwhile watching a YouTube video on that. With the breaks, it's important to think about what's draining versus what's energizing. So a walk in nature will actually refresh me. Me checking my messages or checking my emails is not a break. Like that's a different task. It's not related to study, but that's not going to like reset my mind in any capacity. So it's important what actually gives you energy. Whether it's exercise, time in nature, just like sitting with your eyes closed in bed, listening to a song. Try and have energizing breaks and then leave the draining fun stuff to later in the day. So, you know, TV, etc. Then task switching. So this also reduces your need for breaks. So, I've talked about like 60 to 90-minute sessions, but to be honest, like imagine the first thing I needed to get done was like read a book, like read a textbook. I'm not reading that for 60 to 90 minutes. That's boring. I might get 15 minutes done and now I can switch task. Maybe I'll do 30 minutes of flashcards and then maybe I'll do another 15 minutes of reading the book. And so if that like 60 minutes of one task is hard, then you can do, split it into 30 or 15-minute sessions and just switch between the tasks. And this actually might help improve your retention if you can utilize some chunking strategies. The other thing, start earlier in the year. So I've talked a lot about this, but I think if you spend your holidays doing nothing, you will eventually have a period, maybe say during the term where you're learning at a medium level, but there'll be some period where you're playing catch up and you're starting up here. The point of studying in the holidays or using, studying on weekends or breaks is just to level things out a bit. Because most of the time on the holidays, I'm a bit bored. If you like 30 to 60 minutes of studying in the morning, I'm still going to have a completely relaxing holiday. So the idea is if you can level things off a bit, it will reduce like the really intense times at the end of the year because it's the same people who refuse to study in the holidays are the people who, let's say, the two weeks before the exam are cramming and making lifestyle sacrifices there. So I'm just a personal fan of leveling that off a bit. Everyone has their different approach, but if you are struggling during the year, the holidays are a great time to get ahead, and you will get ahead if you use the holidays as well. So that's one thing I'm a big fan of. It's an unpopular idea, but I'll stand by it. So overall, scheduling is important, but also make the most of the time you have, and that's what we'll discuss here. I feel like everyone is smarter than me and I'm being left behind. Classic thing, even the smartest people feel this. You do well in school, like you get into med, and then you're surrounded by intelligent people and they often know more than you. There'll always be someone who knows more than you and some topic that you don't get, but they get. And it's just like there's a lot of pressure. And when you're under that pressure, it's quite hard to learn. You feel like a sense of inadequacy. Now, here are some ways to manage that because that feeling is a really good motivator to then get out and study. So you can use that also. It's not a bad thing that happens, and it happens to everyone. It happens to me. I'm sure it happens to everyone. Okay, so prioritize tasks. What num like I think when you've got time at home, it's easy to like just get the easier task done. So, I'll reply to my emails first, then I'll check my messenger, etc. But what I would suggest is pick one hard, important thing you want to do every day, and all you need to do is get that done. The rest doesn't matter. It's just a bonus. So if there's a topic you don't like, start with that topic. My objective for today was to go on a 30-minute run. I would much rather have made this video, but I started my day with the run and now I'll get the video done. So, uh, number one, get your most important task done in that day. Number two, prioritize which topics you want to learn. I think often we just fall into the trap of spending an even amount of time on all topics in the course, right? So let's say you have, let's use the school setting. You have chemistry, maths, you have English, and you have, let's say, some other subjects. Now, it's important if you're weaker in a subject, if you're weaker in English, it makes more sense to put more time into that. Whereas if I get maths really easily, then maybe I'll put slightly less time into it because that's already my strength. Now, this is more so in the VCE setting. I've talked in a previous video about if you add in like art and humanities here and you want to be an engineer and you don't like art is not your strong suit, and you can just eliminate this completely. So, but prioritize what topics you want to learn. Start with the ones that you're worse in and dedicate more time to those topics. Maybe you really understand cardiac physiology, but your renal physiology is not up to par. So then when you're revising, you don't need to revise that lecture for the same period of time. You might be better off revising the renal one, twice as much as the cardiac one. So you can prioritize those areas that you're feeling weak in. The Feynman method is very, very underrated. So basically, the idea is you should be able to teach that topic confidently to someone who is junior to you. That might be a 5-year-old, that might be a high school student. So for any topic, try and be able to teach that topic uh, to someone junior. So if you're a final year med student, can you teach it to a first year med student or a high school student? This is good for things that you sort of understand but don't fully get because it's really good at identifying your shortfalls. You can ask me any topic, and within 2 or 3 probing questions, I won't know the answer. And naturally, that will then expose the shortcomings in my knowledge and tell me where I need to look next, what I need to learn next as well. And that'll also tell you what layer you should be learning at. You don't need to necessarily learn the complexities before you've got the basics and intermediate stage right. So whenever you learn something new, especially if it's complex, try and teach it to yourself, to a teddy bear, to a colleague, and that will be a really good way of learning. Don't wait until you're confident to teach it. Start straight away. Even if it's just a 2 minute explanation while you're going to the toilet or on a walk, what do I know about this topic? Okay, then think about your rates of learning on different mediums. So how fast do you learn when you're listening to audiobooks versus reading versus a lecture with both audio and visual? And this is just about making the use of your time most effective. Which medium is best for you, and how fast do you interact through the medium? Most people can read much faster than they can speak, for example. So even if you're speeding up lectures, a fast reader will be able to get through the material much more quickly. A really fun exercise is to go on any PDF and just put like the automatic reader, like the text to speech function on Microsoft Edge, to put it in 2 times and try and read that, and you will be like it is notably slower than your actual reading speed. So even though 2 times is quite fast to listen to, it's actually quite slow to read to, which is important. So spend as much time as possible in your most effective mode of study. If you can get more learnt with reading than listening, then read more. If you retain more with visual compared to audio only, get more visual mediums. But also, there's times for audio only, maybe when you're going for a walk in the car, etc. Uh, and so that's another way of getting more done in less time. Then, are you sprinting versus doing marathon study? This is important, especially for me now on the holidays. The purpose of sprinting is short bursts of intense study. This is really good for learning a new topic. Let's say I'm curious about animals and I want to know all there is to know about wildlife in India. And that's the topic I'm interested in. So I'm just going to deep dive an hour. I'm just going to learn as much as possible. Now, after that, I can just relax. I've learned it, and it's good to have some break time, some thinking time alone with your thoughts after you've done the study session, because your mind is processing that material. So a good hack is like you do your 60 minutes and go for a walk for 15 minutes with just your mind, you'll you'll be retaining that information within that walk as well. So that's actually still counts as study time. Or you can go to sleep. That also will help retain things as well. So sprinting is short bursts of intense study with long breaks. Marathon is just continuous, like a slog of study. Sprinting is very good when there's no no sort of pressure. It's really good for learning topics long term, etc. Marathon is really when you're cramming for exams. But I would say that it's, and I'll make a video on this further explaining these concepts, but we should spend more time with sprinting, like a deep dive into a topic based on what we're curious on, followed by a period of rest. And that will really help with with burnout as well. So less study hours for sprinting, but I think you actually get more retained long term, whereas marathon is really good for short term memory. So like say in the week before your exams, you're just studying 10 hours a day and just trying to get as much jammed in there as possible. Cool. I'm not motivated to study. I keep procrastinating. So there's a dozen videos on how to stop procrastinating, etc. But I think the motivation to study is the bit I'm more interested in because, like, practically there's so many studies on procrastination, and I've talked about some already. But the thing that I think is most important is just how much you enjoy what you're studying. If you're genuinely interested in it, what feels like work or what looks like work to others will feel like play to you. That's a good quote from Naval. Um, and I find the people who are really, really good, everyone I know who is like at the top end of med, genuinely enjoys it. They are genuinely interested in it. You could meet them at a dinner party and they would happily talk about these topics. So I think you should spend time cultivating a genuine enjoyment in the material, or at least the way that you're studying. So let's say I have 7 days to learn about um, a particular topic. Let's say I'm not interested in it. Let's say it's like medieval art. I would spend the first day out of those 7 just trying to get interested in it. Is there some video I can watch that inspires me? Is there some book I can use or read that will help me get interested in it. Like, why am I actually learning this topic? Am I learning about medieval art just cause, or am I learning it because I'm planning a trip to Scotland, and this will like enrich my traveling experience? I may have completely like you know messed up if Scotland and medieval art are related. I just came up with those things off my head. But the point is, like, whatever you're learning, there's a reason you're learning it. And if you can find some sort of meaning, purpose, enjoyment in that learning and actually think about that, and if that becomes real to you, it will make studying a lot more easy to do and enjoyable. So it's like, if you ask someone to run every day, it's pretty hard. Like it's not physically that hard to do a small run, 5 minutes every day, but it's mentally hard. But if you say, okay, the reason you're running is it's going to boost your mood, it's going to look after your health, etc. And if that's real to you, it's not just health. If that's important to you, let's say, oh, my dad had a heart attack last week. I don't want that to happen to me. I'm now going to take my health seriously. I'm going to start running every day. Bang, that is killer in terms of enjoyment and motivation. And when you have that sense of purpose, no matter what you're doing, it will help address some of these things better than any YouTube video can do. So whatever you need to do, journal, medium, look through videos to find that medium, to find that meaning or genuine enjoyment, that's where I would start. The style is an interesting one. So I enjoy multiple choice questions a lot more than reading. It's just more fun for me. So that's another thing that you can think about as well. Like what's actually a more fun way of learning? Multiple choice questions versus lectures versus textbooks. Definitely questions for me. Some people like music. Strictly speaking, does it limit your efficiency? Maybe, but does it make things more enjoyable? Does it help your uh, like duration of learning? Probably. So I'd say definitely it will help if you can make that sort of study vibe more enjoyable. If anything that reduces the threshold to starting is important. And once anything you do to like get you more in the flow state of you're just thinking about the material, nothing else matters. Time is, you're not keeping track of time. Anything that puts you closer to that, I think, is worth cultivating. And then at the end of the day, just reflect on what you got done. It's pretty cool. Some of the days just to think, all right, today I got like 100 multiple choice questions done. I got my flashcards done. I did 3 chapters of my book. I did, 3 practice exams. And like you look back at the day and like that's crazy how much I like could actually get done. And so it's important anytime you sort of are pushing yourself to do something or you do something despite not wanting to do it, have a reflection after that. I didn't want to run this morning, but now I can say like at midday, like I've already done 5Ks today. And that's a good feeling. So always reflect, especially after you've done something hard, just reflect on what that means to you. A flow state is one of those states where you're just learning and time passes. And before you know it, an hour's passed, 2 hours has passed. I think there's some good like videos on getting into flow state that will explain it better than I can. But essentially, anything that puts you towards that, I think, is worth thinking about. And if there's times that you felt it or topics that you felt it, see if you can replicate that, because that will again make the perceived effort less. Then why can't I absorb information in class when others can? So there's always the times where, I felt in a class like some people know the topic are better than me, and I just don't know what's going on. But there's also times where I feel like people just learn, like people just seem to learn topics like that, and sometimes I don't, and it feels like you can feel inadequate, you can feel a bit left behind. But here's some things you can do to manage that. So, with the study that you do, just make it as effective as possible. So, think about how much time you're spending doing active study, which is recalling things from your mind without the answers. There might be prompts, so flashcards, multiple choice questions, spontaneous lectures, versus passive study, reading things, watching lectures. As much time in active as possible. Then, often when you're learning a topic, people will often start passive and move to active. So I will read the textbook, then I will do the multiple choice questions in the textbook. But that I think is wrong. I think we should start active. I think you should start with the multiple choice questions in the textbook or start by writing out what you know or any sort of flashcards, then you will know what's important and where your inadequacies are. There might be things that you already know about that topic. I wrote activate instead of active. So start with active. You don't even, and this is why I think lots of lecturers have a pre-test, a content test, and a post-test. It's not just to monitor how you're improving, but it's also, I think it's helpful for you as well. So I would do a small amount of active work, then do passive work to come up with my shortcomings and address that, and then finish with active work. I've asked lots of doctors how they study, and generally they would just get a question bank, start on the question bank, and then anything they don't know, they will then look up in the textbook. And so this way you don't have to read the whole textbook. You just need to read what you're weak in. So this is good because it follows the active, passive, active framework, and it spends more time on your weaknesses. So it's not just evenly spending your time across every topic. It's spending more time on the weaknesses, and you identify the weaknesses through that first active stage. So start active. That's an interesting point. Spaced repetition, which means don't just learn a topic once, have a couple of reviews before your assessment at increasingly lengthening intervals. So practically, if you review a topic on day one, maybe you review it again on day three, and then day seven, and then day 14. So just get a couple more reps in. Um, into interleaving, I'm even going to get these mixed up. Interleaving, essentially, you don't just do one topic per day, have staggered sessions with multiple topics in each session. So maybe you do, anatomy of the heart in the morning and you do physiology of the brain. That's probably not a good example. Physiology of the endocrine system just after that. And then you have essentially like four topics and you do a bit of each in one study session. And then in the afternoon, you can again do those same four topics. So you're just mixing and matching, basically. A better example is tennis. Rather than just doing forehands all day, doing a bit of forehands and a couple of backhands, a couple of slices, and then back to the forehands. So same time spent studying, but just different skills, and then learning different things will make each of them stick more. And then layering. So start at the topic, at the level that you are currently at. If someone's new to reading, you wouldn't suggest them read Nietzsche straight away. You would start them off on some simpler material where they get concepts of the idea, the language is a bit simpler, and then you wake up. Then you work your way up to the more complicated texts. In the same way, if you're studying something, if you're studying anatomy, don't start straight away at the anatomy textbook. Maybe you start at Teach Me Anatomy, and then you go to KenHub, and then you go to your lecture, and then you go to the textbook. And in the same way, try and just the first time you're learning a topic, get the principles, don't worry about the specifics. If you can work out, that arteries go away from the heart, that they have, greater pressure and that means they need to have a thicker wall. That's more important than knowing, some perforating branch and some like anatomical variant. And I say this because like genuinely, when I started, we had some assigned pre-reading, which just went through like all these anatomical variants, which I've never seen anywhere, and no one knows these things. So don't worry about the specifics, get the basics first. I think if you're serious about like if you get this sort of sense of inadequacy when you see others absorbing things in class quickly, what I would do is just before every class spend 10 minutes learning about that subject material. If your class is on wildlife in South America, just watch a 10-minute YouTube video and then do one set of active like 10-minute YouTube video, and then on the way to class just think like, okay, what did I learn from that video? Well, the Amazon rainforest runs here, like these are some of the unique animals you'll see, etc. Do 10 minutes of pre-learning, then after class, maybe that day or the day after, review what you've learned, and then any other material you need to sort of catch up or get up to speed or get ahead, you can do afterwards. So I would just add 10 minutes before and then 10 minutes the same day of extra learning, and I think you'll far surpass everyone else. Long lists are very hard to memorize long term uh, unless you are frequently in contact with that material. So, for example, in cardiac arrest, there is a four H's and four T's as a list of 8 causes for reversible cardiac arrest. Now, in my experience, anything that's more than 3 items long, you need some sort of like mnemonic or some sort of memory hack to make that stick. Because if I've gone through the four H's and four T's many times, But if I had to think about it now, maybe I will. So I think the T's, there's tamponade, tension pneumothorax, I think toxins and trauma. I'm not confident with that though. And so what would the H's be? I think it's hypoxia, hypothermia, hypokalemia, magnesemia, electrolyte abnormalities, and I think hypovolemia. But note, when I think about that, I'm not fully confident with that. And also, the important thing is, I just will randomly recall those in any order. There's no fixed order to what I've just said. Rather, if I had come up with a memory palace and thought, okay, I'm going to start in the heart, that's where tamponade occurs. Then I'm going to go out to the lungs. That's where tension pneumothorax occurs. Then I'm going to go into the bloodstream after the lungs, and that's where toxins are. I actually don't think T is trauma. I'm going to have to look that up. Um, so if you have some sort of memory palace, which is just a way of visualizing things in a set order, when you're going through your house, you go through the front door, you might go into a corridor, living room, then kitchen. And so in the same way, you can just imagine a set order of things. And so for medicine, it's great because you can just think about the anatomy, heart, lungs, blood, etc. And so I would always have some sort of either mnemonic or memory palace for long lists. And that'll help you memorize things long term. Additionally, there are useful and useless things to memorize. The Knowing the capital of Bolivia is a useless thing to memorize unless you have been to Bolivia or are planning to go there or have some connection there. Useless. Knowing the four H's and four T's of cardiac arrest is probably useful. So you can also spend your time thinking like what is actually relevant and what is just like superfluous things that someone's just telling you just because of just because they're like passionate about the subject. So not everything that lectures tell you is actually important. Okay, the other T is thrombosis, which is probably like relevant because that's the most important one. So the fact that I missed that is important. So if I'm to remember that now, I'm going to think inside the heart blood vessels, you can get a thrombosis, which is a heart attack. Then outside the heart, you have the pericardium where tamponade occurs. Then you have the lungs, which is where tension pneumothorax occurs. And then you have the bloodstream, which is where toxins occurs. Now I have a set order. I'll always say thrombosis, tamponade, tension pneumothorax, and toxins in that order. And that'll make it easier for me to memorize. It also didn't make sense that trauma would cause cardiac arrest because that would just cause some of the H's, not the T directly. All right, use your subconscious to learn. So sleep will help learn things, adding space, not just filling your mind constantly with podcast, material all the time. Give yourself time to process things subconsciously, which is what I was trying to get at earlier with having a walk or just time after your study session where where nothing's going through your head, and you just got time to process that subconsciously, and make sure you're getting lots of sleep. So 7 to 9 hours is always a good target to aim for. So in summary, there's lots of challenges. Studying is hard, but focus on the things you can change rather than things you can't. You can't change your IQ, don't think. You can't change your genetics. And so sometimes like your rate of learning is just might be like significantly linked to your IQ. But you can change how passionate you are about the subject. Things that you care about or are passionate about, you're more likely to learn more and have it stick. You can change how much effort you put in. With pre-learning, learning after, and with spaced repetition, you can retain things longer term. You can change how curious you are. Some people will just learn what's relevant for exams. Some people will learn much more broadly. The person who learns more broadly will remember things longer term. You can change how much you prepare. Do you just rock up to class and spontaneously expect to learn things, or do you do some preparation beforehand? And you can change how organized you are. Do you have set study structures and routines that you use to be as efficient as possible, or do you just expect that, things will just magically go in and you'll just make time for studying spontaneously? All those things can be changed and optimized. And if you focus on them and not on your shortcomings in terms of IQ and genetics, everyone will feel those. I definitely feel that there are many people who are smarter than me, who learn faster than me, who probably have better academic genetics than me. But I can control everything on the right there. And I'll strive to just be as good at those things as possible. And I don't worry too much about the IQ and the genetic side of things. Please let me know if you have any questions. I hope this was helpful. And stay tuned because I've got many more study videos coming up. I'm on holidays now, so I'm enjoying making these and I hope you're benefiting from them. Thanks, guys.